Warning: the following contains explicit language and subject matter that may not be suitable for younger listeners, church folk, and people who enjoy kale smoothies.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to A Pod Amongst Men. I'm your host, Steve B. This is Coffee Break Conversations for the 21st Century. So, my guest today is Thomas Edwards Jr. Thomas is an author, he is a coach, he is a public speaker, he is the creator of the Professional Wingman, and he is the author of the upcoming book, The One-Up Effect. He is also an all-around cool dude, and I genuinely enjoyed speaking with him. He's going to talk a little bit about his upcoming book and what it's all about, and basically ways to find happiness in our lives again and not be, slaves to the daily grind and lead these unfulfilling lives. Like ways we can find the joy in the things we already do, how we change our mindset. You know what? I'm going to stop right there. And I'm going to let him explain because I'm doing a terrible job of it. So without further ado, here he is, Thomas Edwards Jr. Thomas Edwards Jr. Thomas Edwards Jr. I was actually just listening to the episode of It's Complicated that you were most recently on. I was trying to get like a better idea of, where I would want to take the conversation. So.
Yeah, I mean, with them, they when I met them, it was 2015 or 2016. So I was still in the dating game, And so when I reached out to them earlier this year, I told them, hey, like, I'd love to be on your show. And I know it's very dating centric, but I want to tell you, like, I'm not dating centric anymore.
Yeah,
but
full disclaimer.
Yeah, but the conversation that we have can be easily applicable to dating. And then we did the episode in March. It was before COVID. They loved it. Already had me in the books to talk again in August. Then 6 months later, everyone's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. It's kind of like,
how does it work in COVID?
Yeah. That's where everybody was. Everybody was just like, well, I don't know what is okay and what's not okay right now.
Yeah.
You were involved with Cleo Stiller with her book, Modern Manhood, correct?
Yes.
That's how I first heard about you because I was involved with that as well. And she mentioned the podcast in the book and like some of it I read and I was like, oh, okay. I feel good about my quote there. And then some of it I'm like, I don't know. Like it came off a little not the way I think I was intending it, or the way I thought.
I think a book like that. I think when we read it, it's kind of meant. It kind of happens that way, I also know when she had that conversation with me, like I wasn't here where I am now. My mind space was kind of in transition between Wingman and what I'm doing now. But that was also something that was really important to me at the time because the conversation that we're about to have and we're currently having was on the forefront of my mind at that time, right? Helping elevate men and helping them, supporting them through various stages of their lives, right? And so, but her and I also did work in the past too because she was doing, I forget what channel it was, maybe Fusion. She was working with Fusion.
She was on Fusion.
Yeah, and her and I did a segment in New York because I was living in New York back in like 2011, 2012.
Okay.
So that's how
I'm from Jersey, so close.
Yeah, so that's how her and I were first connected and we just stayed in touch. So
it was crazy when she had reached out to me. Like I didn't know her or anything, and she had heard about the podcast through iTunes. And I was like, okay, well, I have 2 episodes out at this point, so I'd love to you. It sounds like great promo. But it's funny how, when something starts, it's one thing, and then as it grows, it kind of becomes something else. And it's
totally.
Like the way it was when it first started, I kind of look back and just like very a little cringy. At least you always look. We're always our own worst critics, but it's just either
Good
way.
times.
Yes. Yeah, so, do you want me to call you Thomas? Tom? What do you prefer?
Yeah, Thomas is good.
Thomas is good. Okay.
Yeah.
So Thomas, like I said, thank you for being here. I guess we should probably get right into it. Are you under any kind of time constraints?
I'm good until 5. So
okay, perfect. All right. Yeah. So, do you want to give like a quick quick little introduction to the listeners as to who you are, real quick?
Yes, my name is Thomas Edwards Jr. I am first and foremost a proud girl dad. After that, I'm a coach, aspiring pro gamer, advisor, trainer, guide. How I actually make money is actually through coaching. I help and support those who are feeling unhappy and unfulfilled in their lives despite the amount of success that they've created, and flip the lens by helping them see life as a game that they can play to not only win but also have fun playing.
Okay,
and
so
yeah.
Oh, sorry to cut you off. Before we get into the real serious stuff, since you brought it up very kindly, we're very nerd friendly here on this podcast. Like,
Excellent.
what you said, aspiring pro gamer. Oh, there it is. That's what I like to see. What's your game of choice?
So right now, I'm competitively playing Tekken 7.
Okay.
So fighting game.
My apprentice Ben at work, he's very into that game.
Yeah. And then for fun, I'm playing games like Gears of War, Halo, Fallout. I'm also actually going to pick up 2 new games, Spider-Man, which is a classic on PS4 now. And
can't recommend it enough.
Spider-Man for me was my favorite superhero character growing up. That I was him for Halloween 3 years in a row.
Really? That was my son with Sonic the Hedgehog.
Another classic.
To this day, but not even just the game, like the character. He has these little like plushes, and we've had to just consistently replace the same plush. Like the arms will fall off, and he can't get enough of it. And I'm like, okay, Sonic. And then
it's interesting. My daughter, she's 3 years old, and she loves watching me play video games, and it's actually allowed me to bring back the classics. So right now we're playing Sonic Adventure on Dreamcast.
No, wow.
Which personally for me, I believe is the most underrated system in the history of consoles.
You're in good company. There's a lot of people that are going to take your side on that one. Very underrated platform.
Yeah. Been a gamer since I've been a kid. So for me, having it in my life even now is just huge.
Which I assume that's kind of what led into the one-up effect, which we will get into. I want to talk a little bit about your transition, because you are the creator of the Professional Wingman, correct?
Yeah.
So you want to give a kind of a description of what that is and like how you went from that and started phasing into something new?
Yeah. So the Professional Wingman started in 2009, and the idea originated at a bar. I was with a friend of mine.
All the best ideas.
Yeah, exactly right. The best ideas happen over drink.
That's how I decided I was going to tell people I was a dolphin trainer.
See?
Yeah, it sounds better. It sounds better than electrician. So I just kind of went with it. We came up with the idea, and next thing you know, I had a full backstory.
Oh, the best.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's fine. Yeah, so I was at the bar. A buddy of mine saw this gorgeous woman, and he said, "Dude, like, be my wingman. Help me, score a date with her." And I'm thinking to myself, like, do it yourself, bro. Like, you don't need my help. He's like, "No, I really do. Like, I really can't do this." And I said, "Well, what's in it for me?" He's like, "Well, I'll buy your drinks the entire weekend if I actually get a date with her." So I was like, okay.
A weekend, that's a good deal.
Yeah. So shooters shoot. So I went over there and chatted her up and introduced them. And they ended up going on a lunch date the next day. And I had drinks. He said, "Thanks for being my wingman." And that was when the idea was born. Maybe I could just teach people how to do this themselves, as opposed to being a facilitator of the connections. And so that started in 2009. And it quickly became a very prominent name in the industry. I was very fortunate to get a lot of media attention for my story, and then also after that,
you've been all over the place.
Yeah, my first hit was on the Wall Street Journal.
Wall Street Journal, GQ, Men's Health,
Steve Harvey Show. Been on Steve Harvey Show. Been on MTV, MTV2, ABC Nightline. Everywhere. It was.
That's amazing, man.
Thank you. It absolutely was amazing to. For a long time, just be acknowledged just for the work that I was doing, and while that was going on, I was in the trenches helping my clients, find success in their relationships. And so to this day, I'm responsible for over 300 marriages and engagements. There are dozens of kids walking to this planet where I'm actually involved. I'm actually a part of their story.
Okay.
Of why they
Good
exist.
way of putting it.
Yeah.
Nice little clarification there.
Yeah. And so, at the height of my success, and one of the things that I wanted, to really bring the transition together, one of the reasons why I even wanted it was because I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the best at being someone who can help others create connections in real time in a world where we're so tech driven, and so being acknowledged at such a high level and then being able to back it up with the success that I had, I achieved that at a very quick mark, being in my early 20s. I think I was 25, 26 when I was getting all those accolades and also delivering the success. And when I had that moment of achievement, there was something felt strange. I didn't feel the sense of fulfillment and happiness that I thought I would by getting to that
It's
level.
just like the movie Hitch.
Yeah. Right. And by the way, I also found my match during this time, right? I found my girl. We got married in 2014. And from all parents, for all, appearances sake, like I was living the dream. And meanwhile, internally, I was completely lost. And not understanding what was going on and not being able to handle it led me down a very, very deep and dark descent, where I just wasn't happy, and then the very thing that I was able to create became the very thing that I was resenting. And
so you're making all this happiness for other people and you can't find it yourself.
Do it for myself.
Yeah.
Right.
That's kind of like the curse of the single life, right? You have all this freedom, but it's like, what do I do with it? What does it amount to? Now I'm essentially kind of having an empty, meaningless existence. I have all the fun in the world, but
while everyone else.
Yeah, it's not fun if I have no one to share it with.
Yeah. And once again, like married man, right? So like you would think that, like he has his wife, right? There you go, right? And so you would think, like he has that person. But I couldn't have felt more alone in that time frame. And then the total identity buster was when I found out that my wife was pregnant with my now daughter. So what became the best day of my life was also the worst day, because that was the death of who I thought I was always going to be. And I spent the next 2 years actively mourning my death through escapism, through alcohol, through drugs, through the work that I resented, through all these things. And it was destroying my life and it was destroying me. And it reached a point where I was on the brink of losing it all, losing my wife, potentially losing my daughter, losing my business, and eventually like losing my life. I was not taking care of myself. And my wife came to me and she said, listen, I love you, and this is not the marriage I want to be in. And so if something doesn't change inside this marriage, I will have to leave it. And she worded it that way specifically, not to necessarily put all the thing on the blame on me, but me at that time took it as that. Yeah. And I said, listen, man, even if I don't do it for her, do it for yourself, man. And so that was when I realized I can't go about this by myself anymore. I was able to, and I was able to reach level of success that I couldn't have dreamed of, and it wasn't working anymore. And so I had to start asking for help. And through that process of seeking therapy, psychiatry, men's fellowship groups, I hired my own coach. I went through weekend, leadership programs, 12-step programs. I mean, I fully immersed myself into receiving support and not being alone in this journey. And by doing that, one could argue that my life instantly changed. I mean, the person I am today is unrecognizable. You can't even recognize me from years past. But when I was in it, it was a very, very long journey. And, after a year or so, while I was able to see the success, and other people were seeing the success of me, quote unquote, getting my life back, I was still not happy. Okay. What I was doing was out of obligation.
So let me cut you off sorry to cut you off for a second, but like this
That's
journey,
fine.
how long of a time period would you say this was? Like from?
So I would say March of 2018 was when my wife and I had that
Okay.
conversation.
Now
And
she was pregnant with your daughter at the time?
Oh, my daughter was already
Okay.
born. She was going to be 2 years old. No, 1 year old that year. She was gonna be one that year. So my wife had pretty much just had her.
See, the reason I ask, I actually haven't talked about this on the podcast, but my wife, we just found out in the last few weeks that she's pregnant. So we're gonna have.
Oh, it's awesome,
Thank
dude!
you.
Congrats.
So we're gonna have another baby, and it was not part of my plan at all. So we already have a son. My son is 9 now. He's gonna be 10 in a couple months, and he's my stepson, but I treat him as if he's my blood. So to me, it's the same as having a kid. But I did get to skip, that all those beginning steps because I didn't meet him until he was already just turning 5. So now finding out that we're having another kid, it's kind of like I'm still getting that fear. I'm like, well, I'm already a dad, So you can never. It's like you're never really prepared for it. It's like that fear. I think really just kind of comes in no matter what, even and especially when you already have plans for your life. It's like, oh, listen,
Totally.
we got a house. Everybody has their own room. Now all of a sudden, all right, well, let's figure something else out.
Yeah.
It just kind of has a way of shaking up the best laid plans.
And the fear.
Yeah, but
the fear,
you mentioned that almost like that sense of dread. It's like, what's going to happen with my life? Is it over now? And as fathers, we know now for the most part, no, like we're still kind of doing the same stuff. Maybe we're more responsible about it. Maybe we, don't go out drinking every weekend with the boys, but we're still who we are. This is just kind of another layer of our own personalities and our lives.
Exactly. And that was the part that I had the hardest time letting go. I thought like no one was going to, hang out with me anymore. No one was going to think I was cool. My business would like disintegrate because I'm now not only this married man, but now I'm a dad. Like, how can you relate? And this is where my mind was just constantly just in running from it, right? Running from the emotions of it. So for me to be able to get support to help with seeing that I'm okay and I can grow from here. I have an entire life to look forward to and an entire life to be responsible for, right? And so I was able to heal so much from this experience and yet still not having fun. And I made a declaration to seek my own happiness, find the thing that is guaranteed to give me fun. And that's when I dialed back into my first true love. No offense to my wife. Video games.
Donkey Kong. That was a lucky guess. I was joking.
Video games was never a source of escapism for me. For me, video games was a place of peace. It was a place of expression, creativity, ideas, community, storytelling, happiness, joy, all these things. And in my 20s, when I was building the Professional Wingman, I allowed so many external stories such as, you're a businessman, you don't have time for video games. Video games are for kids, they're not for adults. Like, are you immature because you're playing video games? When are you going to grow up? I allowed all these external stories to become my own. And so I spent a very long time not playing video games. And I could still remember to this day, the moment I picked up the controller, it felt like an electric charge of energy that like surged through my body. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to double down on this and make sure that this is just a part of my life. And so that's when I declared that I was going to work towards becoming a semi-professional gamer, and picked up Tekken and then started practicing a little bit. And then I went to my first in-person tournament. It was a Red Bull sponsored tournament down in the OC. And I came in 33rd out of 100 plus competitors.
That's not bad.
Total new. It's not bad at all for the first time. And by the way, like at the time I had an Xbox. So I was practicing on Xbox, but in-person games are, especially the fighting game community, PS4 exclusive. So I had to borrow my boy's PS4 controller and play this game for the first time on PS4. And for those who like are very familiar with this,
not the same.
Xbox controllers, PS controllers are not the same. So for me, it's
funny.
That was cool.
You mentioned video games is kind of like a place of peace for you. And I totally understand that. And but at the same time, I'm thinking of like every time I played Halo multiplayer online and there's some asshole with a sniper rifle and I can't find him, I lose that piece. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, no, it's true, dude. Like, I'm still the same way too, man. When
yeah.
I'm playing online and you just get some of those guys who just aren't playing the game the same way. Like, I feel like some of those like old, baseball guys are like, they're not playing the game the way it's supposed to be played,
Yeah.
And it's like,
I do that
but
all
it's
the
still,
time. I got
yeah,
Pokemon for my son. When me and his mother first met, I introduced him to Pokemon, and I started watching it with him. I was like, this was a good show. Like I really liked this. I enjoyed the games, and now
yeah.
like we're at the point where I play. He's not even interested anymore, and I'm like competitively playing like against other podcasts and stuff, and like
Hmm.
talking crazy reckless shit. And being
Yeah,
mad, oh, you're using all legendaries. That's not how you play the game, cheapskates. You know what I mean? Just being
yeah,
ridiculous. And
totally.
it's one of those things where it's great and it's a chance to kind of be who you are and have a little fun and let loose as long as we're responsible about it because it's so
Yeah,
easy to get sucked in now,
so easy,
And I feel like
so
that's
easy.
like a pitfall that a lot of people kind of don't think about until it's too
Yeah,
late.
exactly. And being so new to the competitive gaming environment, I I went in there completely innocent, right? And
Hmm.
so for me, it wasn't about winning. It was about going in there and having this unadulterated fun that I didn't know I could have.
Hmm.
And it was the kind of fun that I dreamed of having when I was a teenager because I told my mom I wanted to make video games for a living and she didn't think there was a career in that. And
Oh,
so much so,
when we
I
were
went to
young, there really
school.
wasn't.
There wasn't, right?
Yeah.
Went to school for video games, told my roommate, who's still one of my best friends to this day, like, I'm going to compete in video games. That didn't exist at the time, at least not that I was aware of.
Hmm.
Now I know that competitive gaming did exist way back in the day, like early 90s back in the
Yeah,
day.
we just didn't hear about
Um,
it.
exactly.
How old are you, by
But
the way?
I'm 35.
Oh, we're same age. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. And so I was having so much fun. And then it just hit me. Like it just stopped me like I hit a wall. And I was like, man, if I can have fun playing video games like this, I wonder what would life be like if I
Hmm.
treated it like a video game too. And then that was like, and then I started, and then it just took me back to like Mario, classic Mario Brothers, right? Like the moment I got that green mushroom, the entire game changed, right? Because now I'm not playing based on survival. I'm not playing based on like trying to avoid risk, right? Now I'm playing
Hmm.
like I got an extra life. I could do some things, right? I
Yeah,
can explore, I can take risks, I can take my time, I can face challenges.
I got some
And
walking
that's where the
around
one up effect
mushrooms.
was born. Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
actually, I mean, that's a just a in general a pretty. It seems like a good theory. You live life. It's like that thing, live life like it's your last day. Well,
Yeah. So
kind
that's
of not
counterintuitive.
exactly. It's a little different, but
Yeah. Because when you think about it, when
hmm.
you live in life like your last, like you also come with like, oh, it is your only shot,
Hmm.
right? And it puts a lot of pressure on us, especially as men, right? Like not only do we have to win, but we have to do it perfectly. And if we don't, we're fucked,
Hmm.
right? And that's pretty much what our mind tells us, right? It may not necessarily be the reality, but it's what our mind tells us. And that kind of pressure doesn't make us want to do anything.
It feels
So,
overwhelming.
yeah, exactly, right? But if we thought, hey, like, you got an extra life here, how your entire psychology changes.
Yeah, so let's experiment a little. Let's try and
Yes,
see where this goes.
exactly. And our confidence level and how we approach life creates a world of expansion like unlike like never before. And the great thing about games, there's two things. One, they're designed to be fun, and two, they're also designed for you to play over and over and over again.
Hmm.
So if we can create a structure in how we approach life the same way, all of a sudden now we can have some fun and win.
Yeah. So to get into the nuts and bolts of this a little bit, I'm not, however much you can tell. I don't want to, I
Yeah,
don't want you to divulge all your secrets here.
no
But
secrets.
how do you put this into practice? In
Yeah,
real life.
yeah. So there's four key principles that I had to think about that were really important about playing a game and then transporting to life. So so there's actually five. Five is chances are you're playing the wrong game, right? So the first one, playing the wrong game. When you think about your life, especially if you feel like you're unhappy, I came to the realization that if I'm not happy, but I feel like I'm winning, I'm playing someone else's game. Because I'm not playing a game. If I'm playing my own game, it's sure as hell gonna be fun. But if I'm not having fun and I think that I'm winning, this is not a game that I made. This is someone else's game that I'm playing.
Like the guy working a job he hates, even though he's making a bunch of money.
Exactly. Because as much money as you're making, someone else is making money and is happy based on what you're doing. Right?
Makes sense.
And for some people, that's okay. But I know for others, that's not okay. Yeah. So realizing that you're not playing the game that is allowing you to win and have fun. The second principle is to know your character, right? Like when you start a game, you got to pick your character. Who's the person that's going to go on this hero's journey, right? And there's many different components of this character. You have your character defaults, which is essentially what that character experiences when they're experiencing growth, when they're experiencing stress, what's their go-tos, what their behaviors, their reactions to it. There's a character vision in terms of how that character views the world and how the character thinks the world views them. You have character ratings, right? Like, what are the things that you're really strong at, right? And what are the things that like you're not as strong at? I don't want to call them weaknesses because everything can be developed, but there are definitely spots where you're not as strong, and that's okay. Natural. Knowing that is huge. And then the last thing is, how happy is that character? When you look at the areas of your life, how happy are you? You know, that allows, and I use that as XP.
Okay.
Right. Your XP determines your level of happiness along this journey. Right. And so that's like that second principle. Third principle is you learn how to play. Right. And going back to the reference of Mario, when you think about game loops, in gaming terms, like game loops are essentially the thing that you're constantly doing throughout the entire game experience. And you're typically taught this game loop at the very beginning of the game.
Tutorial.
Right. Exactly. Essentially a tutorial, right? And they've gotten more complicated as games gotten more complex. So I'm bringing it back to Mario 1 right here, right? So when you start Mario 1.
Are we talking like things. Mario Nintendo or like Mario N64?
Nintendo. Nope. Super Mario 1 for Nintendo.
Okay.
Right?
Red bricks, little Goombas there.
Exactly. You don't even see the red bricks yet. You don't even see the Goombas.
Just the black screen, like 3 lines.
Black screen says World 1 of 1, 1-1, and then all of a sudden you see Mario on the far left. You see the platform, and you see the sky, and that's it, right?
All right, we're here. I can envision it perfectly right now. This is right in the wheelhouse of a lot of my listeners. So yeah, you're on the money right now.
And so imagine being there and like you have the controller. Well, the first thing you do is you move, right? So in that moment, you learn how to move, right? And you move across the platform, and all of a sudden the platform moves. And that's like, okay, cool. I need to continue going right? So the first thing you need to learn is how to walk. Then you see the bricks, then you see the Goomba. And then in your mind, instinctively, you're like, well, how do I figure this out? I must be able to jump somehow. Maybe I jump over the Goomba. Maybe I jump on the Goomba. Maybe I can hit the brick. Maybe the brick breaks. So you learn how to jump, right? Then comes the power up, right? You get the first red mushroom. Is this going to help me? Is this something I need to jump over? Should I eat? You know what I mean?
Am I going to get dysentery? I don't know.
Yeah, right? Like you take it, all of a sudden you get bigger. All right, let's keep moving, right? Mario, the entire game loop is about running and jumping. That's it. And how you're able to beat the game depends on how much you've mastered running and jumping. Everything else just creates a little bit more complexity to the riddle. But ultimately, it's about mastery of the running and the jumping. That's the game loop. And so bringing this now to like your life, what is the game loop that is allowing you to have the power, have the capacity, have the resilience, have the love, have the integrity to handle the daily demand that you have to take on each and every day, right? And so that is what I call HP. Your health points / healthy practices.
Okay.
And so every day there's a set list of healthy practices that you do that gives you health points. And as you go through your day, your health points deplete, right? Like if they didn't deplete, we wouldn't need to sleep, right? So your health points deplete, they eventually get close to zero, you go to sleep, you wake up, and then you do the same thing over again to increase your health points. And you start to notice when you start your day with little health points, those days become very, very difficult.
Oh yeah, first thing in the morning, stub your toe. Damn it, there's 3 health points right there.
There you go, right? Like you just get knocked, right? Because you're stressed out.
Stepped on a Lego. There's 5.
Right? And especially if you have kids, right? So all these extra responsibilities are added on. And oftentimes we wake up in reaction mode to those responsibilities. HP allows you to get to a place where you're in response mode because you've done what you needed to do for yourself to have the health, vitality, integrity, and the power to handle that.
And these would be like healthy practices and ways you
things. So examples of that would be things like meditating, doing a little bit of exercise, having some type of nutritional beverage or some type of green nutritional beverage. It could be journaling. It could be sending a message to someone that you know just to say that you're thinking of them and saying hi. Maybe if you have a girlfriend, a boyfriend, or a wife, or a husband, leaving a note for them, letting them know how much you care for them, why you appreciate them. Maybe it's reading a piece of content that increases your value towards something that you want to achieve. Maybe it's sharing that value with someone else, right? There's so many different ways. Maybe it's an act of kindness to someone that you don't know.
Right? Essentially, it's kind of like
so many different ways that we can increase our.
It's like ways, like different little ways we find to fulfill ourselves and kind of feed our soul, essentially. You know.
Yeah, because when we feed our soul, then we are in much better position.
That's HP, baby.
To help feed and support and help others. Right.
Gotta find that health pack.
But if we're doing that for everyone else first, right? Right.
Suffering.
We're doing it for everyone else first, and the day ends, and we're at 1 HP. There's not much we're going to do for ourselves at that point. And then that becomes something that we resent and become frustrated for. And then that on repeat leads to a very unfulfilled life, right? And so that's a huge component. That is the game loop of in some ways. And then there's what I call MP, magic points.
Okay.
Right?
This is like Legend of Dragoon here.
Totally. It's really essentially creating your own RPG in a way. But the MP allows you to take instances in your life where you might have felt emotionally charged, right? Triggered events, and understanding, well, what's the story that created the whole sequence? Is that a story that actually is serving my life? And if it's not, can I get rid of that story? What needs to happen for me to get rid of that story? You know, is it disproving it? Is it healing something that I'm feeling pain from that may have happened years ago? Or is it something that I haven't even been conscious of until right now? And then once that story gets destroyed, what's the new story that's going to lead my life? Right? What's going to be the new story that I'm going to, lead my life with? And what have I learned from the experience? That learning, I like to call it the conversation between your ego and your soul. Where your ego is trying to tell you these stories, and maybe they help you, maybe they don't, but your soul has definitely a clear message it wants to tell you. And oftentimes we get so caught up in our lives that we don't spend a lot of time to know what our soul really has to say. Sometimes some of us don't even know what our soul sounds like. Right? So
yeah, that's the people that are just afraid to be alone with their own thoughts.
Yeah, right. So giving yourself an experience that allows your soul to have a voice and to be able to listen to it and learn from it and let it guide you in a way that can support you and that can serve you. That to me is magic. It's almost like you go in the dark where so many people are afraid of finding, but in order for dark to exist, there has to be light. So when you go in the dark, it's because you're clearly on a mission to find light, right? And we take that light, we bring it back to the surface, and then we figure out, how do we apply that to not just that one area of life where you had this instance, but all parts of your life? This becomes the magic of transformation in people's lives. When you see people like in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, completely transforming their life, it's because of the magic that they've discovered in the process that has allowed them to do that. So
found that one move that's just crushing all the opposition.
Yeah, no different than grabbing the red mushroom, maybe the fire plant in Mario, grabbing the invincible star, right? Or if we're going to later Marios, Mario 3, grabbing the P-wing, the feather that allows you to fly. You know what I mean? Like it can
the
go
raccoon
on and on
hat
and
where
on.
he's flying. Apparently raccoons fly and
yeah,
place,
right.
and Italian plumbers can levitate above the earth.
All kinds of things, and so the magic is there, and then eventually it's like developing the skills, right? Like you find areas of life, like the 4 worlds that I like to play in are of purpose, which governs your mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. Then there's the world of play that speaks to the people, places, and things that bring you joy. Then there's passion, which is love of yourself, love of romance, and then love of the world, which I also like to call like scaling empathy. And then the world of performance, where you increase, share, and ask for value. So those are the areas of life that I feel like a lot of people look for fulfillment in, and you develop the skill set inside of those areas. And then eventually you play to win. And so when you play to win, you design a game where you set these challenges for yourself that might either be impossible or things that you've always wanted to do but never allowed yourself to do. And you use those principles to get you there, And when you're able to track things and measure and know and get points and experience these power-ups, all of a sudden life becomes fun. Going after these challenges becomes fun. And whether you get there or not, it doesn't matter eventually, because you're just having fun living that kind of life where you get to just have fun,
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you don't get there. So many of my clients have gotten to levels of success, but for them, it got a lot easier because they were having fun.
Well, it's like goal setting. It's, you don't even know what you're working towards half the time. And as long as you know what you want to accomplish, then you could kind of figure out where you are along that journey.
Yeah.
Whereas so many people are just kind of going day by day, going to their jobs, paying the bills. And it's like, okay, where are we going? Are we just going to do this forever and just exist, and just, eat McDonald's twice a week and, watch The Office on reruns on Netflix constantly? Like, what are we working towards? I think you're spot on with that. It's when we have a goal or a mission or something, in this case, with a game, like you have a mission in the game.
Yeah.
Like when you know where you're going, you have a reason to be doing the things you're doing. And that in itself is very valuable, that a lot of people don't even, simple little thing that a lot of people completely overlook. It's like, it's right there in front of you. Like, let's figure out where are we going and why are we going there? That's it. So far, you're making a lot of sense. You're making a lot of sense, Thomas.
Steve, can I ask for a favor?
Yes, sir.
my daughter's called me right now. Can we take a pause while I go figure out what's up with her?
Taking a break right here. Had to pause. We will be right back.
Yep. But anyway,
here. We just said we were talking about goals. We were saying,
we're talking about how it doesn't matter the goals that you set. When you're having fun along the way, that's what becomes what matters most.
So what was that? That was part number 3 or 4?
That was 5. Play to win.
That was 5. Okay. Yeah. So you're putting all this into a book, correct?
Yes. Appropriately called The One-Up Effect. Live life like you found an extra one.
So how is the process of writing the book going?
Man, I think people knew that I was going to write a book before I even knew I was going to write a book. My mom, when I was a little kid, just knew that I would write a book. I mean, for her perspective, it was about a bunch of poems that I used to write, but she still thought that way. When I was in in my time as a professional wingman, people just knew that I was going to write a dating book, and I even, have an agent and thought it would be perfect because as a guy, you don't really get that perspective so often. And I was into it until something just felt like off, it felt like people see like the surface level of what I do, which is find people love, but like they're not seeing the inner workings of what's actually going on and how this impacts other parts of their lives. I mean, these are people who are coming to me saying that they're not whole and that they won't be whole until there's someone else that tells them that they're lovable. And that is a very troubling story to not carry, but also to feed, right? Like, for me, a lot of what I was doing unconsciously was feeding that story by helping them find that person, right? And like, that's a lot of pressure for someone who doesn't even know the other person that they're gonna take that on, right? That
Yeah, that's a
responsibility.
lot to put on someone.
Yeah, and listen, like, fortunately, no divorces that I know of on record, right? Like, everyone is happy. I even had like a marriage happen this past Sunday. Like, it, fortunately for what I was doing and how I was, coaching and guiding these clients, it worked, right? But to put that in a dating book didn't make sense, right? Because most people are asking me like, well, what do I say to her, or how
Yeah.
do I get into a relationship, right?
They're kind of using you like a pickup artist.
Yeah, like what's the best color to wear on your online profile picture, like, and that for me was never about that, right? And so being in the place where I am now, and seeing that my purpose in life is to show people that they can have fun now, they can have joy now, and be successful. They don't have to sacrifice it. One doesn't need to be sacrificed in order to have the other. It felt like right now is the great time to write a book, and the response has been great so far. I mean, right now it's available for pre-order, and so you can go check it out and grab your copy. And it speaks to these principles that we just talked about, and so for me, this will probably be one of the easier books from a concept perspective to actually write down.
Yeah.
To comparison to the dating aspect. But I also know that being an author is a huge undertaking, and what I've heard from other people, a life-changing experience. So I look forward to that.
Um, in reference to the whole like the dating thing and the professional wingman stuff that you did before this, it seems interesting to me how all of us, especially as men, we're kind of conditioned and trained to believe that that's like our goal in life is to find the right woman, the right partner, and start a family, settle down, and then that's when real life begins. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it really is a lot of pressure to put on someone because especially I'm sure you've worked with a lot of these guys in the process. Is a lot of people just are not comfortable in those social situations, and then when you add on the whole romantic layer to it, it makes it even more like daunting of a task for some people. And I've been there myself. I've had great times, and all of a sudden you just have like a wild hair in your ass, and you could talk to anybody about anything, and you're great. And other times when I walk into to wherever we're at, and I immediately want to leave. I just want to have my drink, put my head down, and not speak to anybody. And just the idea of talking to a female like that, I would literally rather punch myself in the balls right now. That sounds horrible. I'm terrified. She's way too attractive, and I feel like, like a big lump of shit right now, and this is not what I want to do. But we all have that capacity to swing kind of wildly back from either side. I think at least. I'm also not a doctor. I'm just some jerk off from Jersey. But that to me, like the dating thing, I feel like we put too much pressure on ourselves and each other sometimes. Like, do you find that?
100%. And it doesn't just stop at dating. It stops at, it goes to our careers, right? But then, like, when we're in a relationship, when we're in a marriage, when we have kids, that still exists, right? It's this fear for a lot of people. It's this fear of rejection, fear of not being enough, right, or good enough. And we can point to like biological traits, right? Like, as men, like we want our family tree extended, and the way to do that is to procreate, and we need to find a mate that is suitable for procreation, right? That can continue the sustainability of our tree, or at least our tree branch, right? And so that is a huge component of that. And for whatever reason, it's directly tied. When you walk into an environment, whether it's a bar, even in today's world, a Zoom room, and you're around people that you don't know, and you find some who are desirable, whether they are physically attractive, maybe they're someone important, maybe they're an influencer, maybe they're a friend of a friend. Immediately you go into a flight or fight response because you want to make sure that you're accepted. And for some of us, we're willing to do whatever it takes, and some of us are not willing to do what it takes. But in that moment, the fear is at an all-time high, you know?
Hell yes.
And what I found, and I'm also sharing from personal experience too, like the fear of rejection still exists even inside like my own very marriage.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like people forget that, like, you know, it's when you ask for something, the fear of rejection will always exist because you don't want to get the no. Right. Like people just assume that, oh, like you're in a relationship, so sex should just be a given. You and I both know that that's not true. Right. Like, you know, and there are a lot of, and we still have to take a few no's in our lives. We don't want to, but it's a part of the process. And so we have to understand that, like, being told no is not directly tied to our personal self-worth, you know, and that's one of the biggest struggles that I feel most men have, is when things don't go their way, or they don't get something that they want, or if they ask someone that they see as valuable, maybe even more valuable than they do, that they see themselves, right? And they're told no, that is not an indication of their self-worth, you know? And it's difficult in those moments to disconnect that.
Yeah, rejection's hard enough, especially when it's taken everything you have in you just to put yourself out there in the first place. So I've had this conversation with my wife before, and I've tried to explain to her, like, listen, it could be really terrifying having to approach a total stranger in like a bar, especially when you're attracted to that person and you are kind of putting them on a pedestal. You're really putting yourself out there, and when it doesn't work out the way you hope it will, it can hurt. And it like you said, it's not a reflection of who you are or your self-worth, but sometimes it doesn't make it any easier. It still sucks. And
some women don't understand that because they don't have that perspective. Like, you know, there was a time where I would also work with women in the dating space, and they would just say, like, I don't get why guys just can't come up to me. And I'm like, you have to understand, like, and for us guys, like, we're numbers here, right? So I'll throw some conservative numbers here. From the age of 18 for women, right? You know, let's say they go to college and they go out to college parties. And let's say between the hours of 8 p.m. and 12 a.m., they're approached by 5 guys, right? I'm being conservative because if you're an attractive woman, like, you're going to be approached by more than 5 guys in that 4-hour window.
For sure.
Right. so
especially if you live in like Miami or something.
Yeah. Right.
Every 5 minutes.
Exactly. Right. So conservatively, 5 guys. So let's say they go out Friday night, Saturday night between the hours of 8 and midnight. That's 10 guys a week, 520 guys a year. By the time they're 28, they've been approached by over 5,000 men. By the time they are 38, they've been approached by 11,000 men, right? This is conservative numbers here, right? For 8 hours a week, right? Out of 168, right? 2 nights out. That is astronomical. How many women do you think guys approach in that same time frame? Maybe 1, right? And so that's 2 a weekend, 104 women a year. That's being, you know what I mean? That's being conservative. Like, some guys go the night and they don't talk to anyone.
Yeah.
Right.
But then on the same hand, there's some guys, you know, I know you say shoot, but some guys like empty the clip. Like, they just
totally
go all
right.
out.
They don't have any shame. They don't
it's
care.
A numbers game, bro. You just gotta ask everybody. You gotta throw a lot of lines out there.
Yeah, and that's misleading, you know, in a way, because I feel like it is a numbers game from an experiential standpoint, right? Like, you bring up your experience when it comes to what happens when you're interacting with someone. How do you feel when you're in that moment? Getting comfortable with how you feel in that moment, being able to handle different responses. Like, what is really a rejection? Like, what is, you know what I mean? The more opportunities you give yourself, the more experience you have. But it's not a numbers game from the sense of eventually someone's going to say yes. That's not how it works, right? Because it's not the one yes that you're looking for. It's the one yes that you want from the person that you're interested in, that you want.
You're looking for a specific yes, not just any yes.
Exactly, right? And so the numbers game comes from an experience standpoint. But I think we just need to, you know, for us men, we need to give ourselves more grace, because we don't have the social intelligence and the experience to the level that women do.
Yes.
You know, and I
feel like also, we're not taught that from a young age.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There's very few cultures that actually teach, you know, men when they're young to not have that type of fear around interacting with women. Right. There are very few cultures that have that, you know, and in a way that's respectful.
Yeah.
right? Like I got to add that component too, because there are
That's
some
a
cultures
big
that
one.
don't that devalue women, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
naturally, the way they treat them and the way they approach them is going to be different, right? But it's just one of those things that I feel like for men, like, the fear of rejection, not being enough or not being good enough is something that constantly comes up in our lives, and that's typically one of the first things you get to understand as your character, right? Like you are enough right now as it is, and you're just on the quest of creating more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Expanding that enoughness, right? Freedom inside of that enoughness, right? But you can have that now. And that's what this whole experience is about, man. Like for so long, I thought if I had things outside of myself, that it would make me whole, that I would be enough,
Always looking externally.
always. And I never gave myself a chance to be in the moment and say, man, like I did that, man, like I have that right now, right? I was always thinking about what's the next thing, and it drove me crazy, you know. And when I realized that there was nothing out there that I could find that was going to be enough, that fucked me up, bro. That's why I was drinking.
That'll
Right?
do it.
Like
That'll do it.
because I didn't know how to emotionally handle that revelation,
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, the next question is, well, what am I here for? Why am I here if I can't find something out there that's going to fulfill me? And the answer was inside of me the whole time. And it wasn't until I listened that I realized that.
That's a beautiful thing. So before we go any further, I know we're up against time here, so I'm only going to ask you one last question. We're gonna skip the humble pie part. We'll save that. We'll do another one down the road.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's your advice for, say, the average guy? You have a job, you're making money, you're making ends meet, you have a family, you have responsibilities, mortgage, everything. What's your advice to that guy who maybe doesn't love his job, but it helps him fulfill those responsibilities, and maybe that guy doesn't have a lot, he hasn't discovered what hobbies he has or what have you, and like what can that guy do to find happiness and some kind of fulfillment in his life? I mean, does it require quitting your job and changing professions and following your passion, or is it something that, like, is it a daily practice we can do every day? Like, what do you tell that guy?
For so long, it has now become easy for us to sacrifice ourselves for work, right? If I just put in a couple more hours, it's fine. I just won't go home. I just won't come home as early as I normally do, or I'll skip the gym, or I'll skip the meal, or I'll skip the hang out with my friends, or I'll skip, you know what I mean? Like
Got to get
it's
that
so
OT.
easy.
Baby wants a Peloton for Christmas.
Yeah, right. But we don't do that for the other side, right? Like we don't say, you know what, I'm just gonna leave work a little bit early. Work will survive without me for a little bit. I'm gonna go and play video games. I'm gonna go and hang out with my kid. I'm gonna go and take my wife out for a coffee or for a walk. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go and I'm gonna dance, or I'm gonna go skateboard. I'm gonna go, you know what I mean? Like we don't do that the other way, because there's something around the culture of work that creates such a high level of shame that it's like we don't get to have that. And so the advice that I had is to share with you that you do get to have that. And no one is going to give that to you. You have to take it, right? You have to take that time that is always yours and carve out a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit of time that you get to be with you. Not you, the dad, not you, the worker, not you, the brother, the son, the father, you know what I mean?
Holy
Like
Spirit, all that.
Right? Like, yeah, right. All these roles that you play, they are important, but don't let you be the last item on that list.
Yeah. It's a balance. It's a work-life balance, and you're out of balance. You're not allowing yourself that happiness, that joy.
Yeah.
Everything is dedicated towards helping other people, which of course is your
important.
responsibility. It's important.
Yes,
you can't sacrifice it, but there has to be a little give.
Yeah,
give and take.
And I'll never forget it. I wrote down a list on a piece of paper of all the roles I played in my life, and obviously, Dad was up there, being a husband, being a coach, being a friend, being a cousin, being a son, being a brother, being a nephew, right? Being an uncle, like all these things just kept on going on and on. And the last item on the list was Tommy, right? That's my inner child, right? Like that's the name of my inner child. And I was like, this list is fucked up. Why am I the last item on the list?
It's my list. How did I end up last?
Right, exactly, right? I wrote the list, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, and so I literally just flipped it upside down, and I was like, this looks appropriate, because if I can create space for me to be with me and give myself all that I feel I need, then I will have unlimited capacity to fulfill the responsibilities and the roles of everything else that I have in my life. And it shows up every single day. When I wake up at 6:30 in the morning, and my wife and my daughter doesn't wake up until 7:30, typically, give or take a good night of sleep, that's an hour that I get to myself. And if I can give myself an hour, I have no problem giving the other 23 to everyone else. But I have to come first.
Yeah. You got to put on your own life vest before you put on the person next to you.
Exactly. Right. And that's what it's about.
I love it. I love it. So before we get out of here, you want to tell them where they could find you, where they could find the book, where they could pre-order all that? Give us plug away.
Yes. So just you can find me at my website, thomasedwardsjr.com. There,
right underneath you.
Yep, there on the homepage, you'll see a direct link to pre-order my book, The One Up Effect. You can also find me on Instagram. I'm Thomas H. Edwards Jr. And I love interaction, so don't be afraid to reach out and say hi.
Beautiful. Thomas, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I love what you had to say, and I enjoyed this. I enjoyed the conversation, man. I'm hoping we get to talk again.
Definitely. Thanks for having me on, bro.
Hey, my pleasure. There it is. That's the podcast. People, thank you for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please make sure you go follow Tom. Make sure you go look him up on Instagram. Make sure you pre-order his book. Sounds pretty interesting. I don't know about you, but as a gamer, I was very much intrigued. So before we get out of here today, if you guys have made it this far, I hope you have, I want to just say this. By the time you're listening to this, it's going to be Thursday. In just a few days, we have our presidential election. It's here, finally. Thank fucking God. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I'll tell you who I'm voting for. I'm going to vote for Biden, not my favorite candidate, but given the choices we have, I figure that is probably the most responsible thing I could do with my vote. And it's no secret I'm no fan of Trump, but it is what it is. And I'm not going to tell you guys how to vote. I'm just being honest. I'm telling you how I feel. All I'm saying is vote. Everybody's jamming it down your throats. I get it. The phone's ringing off the hook with whatever fucking... I really feel like it's... I don't think it's pollsters. I think it's just like... I don't know. Something's going on because my phone keeps ringing. Maybe that's totally unrelated. But, I guess if I answered it, I would know. But I don't. And I don't. So... but guys, please vote. It's not that hard, especially now. You get your absentee, your mail-in ballot in the mail, fill it out, put that in the envelope, and you drop it off at the, they have the drop boxes, the ballot drop boxes. It's super fucking easy. I did it. It took like a couple minutes. No lines. You just go, boom, done. Go get a coffee on your way home. It's beautiful. Do your civic duty. You're a fucking American citizen. Well, if you're not an American citizen, this part really doesn't apply to you. But, guys, vote. It's really not too much to ask. If you want to call yourself a patriot, you want to call yourself a responsible adult, fucking vote, because your voice matters. And if you think it doesn't matter, well, you're wrong. And to illustrate that, let me ask you this. If your vote didn't matter, why is it that people are trying to take it away and make it harder for you to vote? Fair question. Think about it. Why is it that they're trying to make it harder for you to vote? If your vote didn't matter, who would give a fuck? So, chew on that. Guys, just vote. Just do it. Do it for me. I'm getting old. Be my dying wish. You guys could do it for me. You guys could help a dying man. This is like the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So I'm done talking shit now. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. As always, you know where to find us. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, APodAmongstMen. You can find the audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio. Amazon Music has podcasts now, so it's there too. Wherever you get your podcasts, we're there, guys. Make sure you listen. And if you're listening now, good job. You succeeded. You figured it out. So, yeah. Oh, by the way, happy Halloween. Yeah, almost forgot. Halloween is coming up on Saturday. Be safe out there, people. Take care of the kids. Take care of the family. Try to have fun if you can, but don't be a dick about it. All right? We'll see you next week. Peace.